Personally, my name is Yuri. I'm going to speak in just a moment. I'm moderating this event, and I'm from Finland, from Helsinki, and we can see that there's already people from different countries arriving into this event from the United Arab Emirates and Germany and also Finland. Let's wait for just a few minutes so that everyone can arrive, and then we can start. Looks like we're having a very international audience here. Wonderful. So please feel free to engage and use the chat box to pose questions. We will have some time for discussion at the end of this event. But first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and happy UN Day. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. Therefore, we're having this webinar. My name is Yuri Birjulin, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. Just to shortly introduce myself, I work as the UN Youth Delegate of Finland, which means that I represent the youth as a part of the national delegations of Finland to the United Nations. I went to the UN in February, but this autumn I would have gone as well, but unfortunately because of the coronavirus, I've had to work through Zoom like we are here right now. In this event today, we're going to hear about ways in which we can solve the global problems together. For instance, climate change is now affecting every country in every continent, and our planet is heating up at an alarming speed. But it's a race that we can win together by taking climate action, all of us together. To have a positive impact on all people, we need to include everybody, and this is what this event is about. The more people are included, the more we can act to fight climate change. Technologies can help with this, and we will show you how in this online event today. Now, in this webinar, we will hear 4 interactive talks hosted first by Orna Ben-Lulu from the Youth Agenda 2030 group. She will speak about taking climate action. Alexandra Bloks from the World Federation of the Deaf, he will speak about inclusion and diversity, particularly from the perspective of people with disabilities. Then we will have Dr. Sepimood Azimi from Women in Data Science, who will speak about diversity and inclusion from the perspective of gender. And finally, we'll have Jelena Ocenik from the International Renewable Energy Agency, who will connect the previous dots by speaking about climate action through renewable energy and innovation. I would kindly ask each speaker to keep to the schedule so that we will have time in the end to answer some questions. This event is also accessible through international sign interpreter, Markus Ara. And when we show videos about the speech, we will post the description in the chat and comment section. Finally, I encourage everyone to participate, answer the polls, post questions if you have some, or comments in the chat box. And also, please use the UN 75 photo frame and complete the UN 75 survey. But now I will give the floor to our first speaker, Orna Ben-Lulu from the Youth Agenda 2030 group. Thank you, please.
My climate anxiety stems from the guilt of feeling that my actions are causing the climate to warm and the environment to change. I feel that I cause it with my own actions. It always feels like you can't do enough, even if you did. The ball is a description of my personal anxiety. This anxiety moves out of my body through my hands that way that I can see it from outside of myself. This is what young artist Mari Kaakkola told me when I was doing a media and art project about the climate anxiety suffered by young people. This project for Rare Media involved into the fact that we wanted to enable everyone to have this same process in which anxiety is transformed into action and ultimately into physical matter. In the end, we ended up building a giant climate anxiety ball on the main square of our hometown Tampere. This huge ball was built of plastic waste generated as a byproduct of agriculture. It was the same plastic that caused Mari's anxiety at her parents' farm. I felt then, and I feel now, that Mari's story is the story of many of us young people suffering from climate anxiety. We see how the actions of our parents and our society leads to climate and environmental crisis that leaves us feeling helpless. A few years ago, I myself was really climate anxious and even depressed. I felt powerless. I felt like I couldn't influence any direction with my own actions. Mentally, the anxiety often felt like panicking. Sometimes again, I couldn't see the future. Then the anxiety felt really physical. It felt like my shoulders were stinging and my temples of my forehead felt like stone. I was recent graduate journalist at the time and disappointed with the mainstream media I worked for. Looking back, you can see that those were the moments when I started to recognize my anxiety. That was a critical moment to start acting. After that time, I became acquainted with other young people who were also disappointed and wanted to work for a better future. Despite my anxiety, one thing was clear: something had to be done. With this, we set up our own media, and I also found my way to sustainable development. With it, I also found my way to Finnish Agenda 2030 youth group. And at the same time, I also began to re-establish my own relationship with nature that I found through breathing and being in the forest. So my own anxiety and perceiving it was the way that I found my way to sustainable development and climate actions. That other summer, when I worked with climate anxiety topic, I was able to interview Panu Pihkala, who studies climate anxiety. He stated that when one is anxious, it needs to be dismantled. That is, climate anxiety can be seen as a positive thing when it serves as a fuel for us to function. He also comforted that climate anxiety is very normal reaction to things happening in the world. However, when it paralyzes us, it can be a negative thing. I think it is important that while we are acknowledging, for example, the fact about climate change, we are also dealing with the anxiety that arises from it, which may be in the way of our action. This is the driving force behind my climate actions. Identifying, stating, acting. It is good for us to identify things in the world to state the state of their existence and ultimately to act on their behalf. But at the same time, we must strive to take the best possible care of ourselves and each other so that we can cope with climate change as well as possible. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, Orna, so much. I really felt that your message was so powerful, especially the work you're doing is just incredible. And I really think that the working with the problem that we saw in the video by making it something concrete and something tangible is a really innovative way. I think it's this was very impressive, and I hope many of our guests and viewers will have some questions for you, because this is a unique way that I have seen also among the young people to start working with climate change, is to work through arts or different ways like this. Thank you. Next, we will hear Mr. Alexandre Bloks from the World Federation of the Deaf, and he will speak about diversity and inclusion, particularly of people with disabilities. Please, Alexandre.
Thank you very much for having me and inviting me to this wonderful webinar. I'm Alexandre Bloks from the World Federation of the Deaf. I'm the Human Rights Officer there. So that's my work. And we work with our member organizations, ensuring their work for deaf people. We're one of the oldest disability organizations in the world. And now that UN celebrates its 75th anniversary, we hope that we want to celebrate that with you. So we're coming just right after the UN. We want to make sure that information is provided in sign language, and the sign language users and deaf people are not excluded. We need to be included so that all deaf people, through their language, can participate, can enjoy life, and can be part of the solution in climate problems. Sign language is a fundamental human right. And as you may not know, there are actually over 200 sign languages all around the world, not just one. And I think it would be fun for all of us to learn a little bit of signing. And I will now be using international sign. I want you to copy me. So this is our theme. And let's exercise this together. Sign languages for climate action. Okay? Please repeat with me. Sign with me. Sign languages for climate action. Yeah. One more time, I think. We can do this once again. Sign with me. Sign languages for climate action. Well done. Well done. So now you have a little bit of information of sign languages. And I'm sure that whenever you meet a deaf person, they will be delighted to have you signing for them, even if just a little bit. So as I said, sign languages are a fundamental human right. But in history, deaf people and sign language users have been discriminated for years and years. And this actually started back in the 1880 to the Second International Congress on Education for the Deaf that took place in Milan, Italy. This gathering brought together the world's most eminent specialists on deaf education. And actually, none of them were deaf themselves. But they gathered in Milan to exchange and discuss best practices for deaf education. And that conclusion was that that would be a system called oralism, which meant that deaf people were expected to use their voice and use talking. This had had consequences for more than a century for deaf people who have not been able to use their natural sign language in public. They have been punished for use of sign language. They have lacked completely access to education in their national sign languages and have remained isolated from their society with very little access to information and knowledge. This seclusion and isolation of deaf communities from information and knowledge through the medium of sign languages have been progressively attenuated with the emergence of new technologies. In the beginning of 70s and 80s, when the news on TV were interpreted in national sign languages. So this was the first time that deaf communities could actually autonomously access information themselves at the same time as their hearing counterparts. In the 2000s, with the birth of the internet, webcams, social media, smartphones, these different technologies have definitely unlocked the door of the global network in sign language. Finally, we can communicate. Finally, we're free to sign and we have access to information. Sign languages have become also very visible in the world as languages. 50 years ago, this was not able, people were not able to even imagine this. So more and more people gain information about deaf people's right to use their national sign languages and different opportunities that provides accessibility and change in society. Having that information, people also have influence, have the ability to influence others. Sign language users are often very small minorities and they get very little information. But the more we know, the more we can make of that information. It is extremely important to include all people, also deaf people, about information on climate change and how to fight that. You have to provide people with accessibility to this information. Deaf people have access to information through sign language interpreters. So that's one key component. Interpreters need to be trained and qualified and professional. Also, providing subtitles is vital. Also, blind people need information in Braille. Those with mental disabilities also need easy to read texts. So all different disability groups need their own kind of accessibility into this information. Providing information on climate change should be shared with everyone so that all different disability groups also become aware of climate change and how they can take action and change for the better and fight climate change. These innovations are very helpful for us. We are many and we are diverse, and we need to be part of the fight against climate change. Fight against climate change also needs disabled people. So people from various backgrounds with great diversity need to fight together. We need to be taken along and participate in this work. How to invite us? Technology is a great tool helping you to do that. It provides you with various opportunities to reach out to small minorities, such as disabled people, to participate in this work. I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. So I would like to invite you once again to sign together Sign Languages for Climate Action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexandra, so much for your presentation. I really feel that we don't hear enough about sign language, for instance, and all the different challenges that we have for accessibility. And even though we speak about global problems or climate change or equality, inclusion, still I feel that people with disabilities are unfortunately still too often left out. And it's very interesting how the modern technologies can perhaps change things to improve access and help everyone to participate. It is so important that everyone has actually the access to this. I just recently heard a comparison that sustainable development is like a house with 17 different doors that all lead to the same end. And I think that exactly focusing on all the different ways of participation and different ways of inclusion can actually help us lead to the same big end. Please, if you have any questions for Alexandra, please post them in the chat box so we can discuss them at the end. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Sepinoud Azimi from Women in Data Science. And this talk is going to be about and have an emphasis on diversity, inclusion, and particularly gender. Please, Dr. Sepinoud Azimi.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Sepinoud Azimi from Åbo Academy University and Women in Data Science ambassador here in Finland. And our goal is to promote the involvement of women in all aspects, especially in the field of data science, and to provide role models and opportunities for them. The fact that the climate is changing, and it is not necessarily changing for better, is an undeniable fact. What matters today is what route we are deciding to take, what actions we are choosing to be responsible for. Leave the world for the future generations, a fun place to live in or a green place to be in. One important point to remember is that we are all in this together, no matter who we are, where we live, what our skin color and gender is. We share the same world and therefore the same responsibility. Specifically today, I would like to tell you why women are pivotal parts of this shared responsibility and why having more women in ICT is a decisive factor in having a better path forward. Women are important change agents. A study performed recently put educating girls and family planning on its top 10 list of the most important and impactful climate solutions. And this is for good reason. The gender perspective on climate is also about the solution we provide as it involves our current habits, our future habits, and the way in between. For example, the commuting habits between men and women are different. A study from Sweden, Innovate an agency, concludes that emission from traveling could reduce by 20% if men's travel patterns become more like those of women. Moving to diets, one survey of 11,000 people in the US found that 24% of vegans are men. I'm not necessarily advocating veganism. What I'm saying is that we are different in our ways. And even in investment, gender comes in as a parameter in the decision process and risk preferences. All of these, transport, food, and investments, are areas that need to be transformed to decarbonize the society. What these examples indicate is that we need to understand gender differences in preferences and drivers when tailoring new technologies, policies, marketing campaigns to achieve climate smarter behaviors or consumption patterns. So what are the practical implications of this when it comes to developing climate smart offering? If we want to disrupt the transport system with a ride-sharing system or get more people to use public transport, we need to consider the safety aspects through a gender lens. If we want to disrupt the food business with new plant-based options that get more men to the table, there are likely implications for design and marketing teams. And are you still seeing my screen? And for
right now, unfortunately,
something happened. Somebody disabled my screen sharing. Okay, I can continue talking. That's fine. Okay. And for green investment programs, they have to be well packaged to make them attractive to both men and women. So my question is why we need more technical Greta? Obviously, this is true for how our industry develops and markets 5G, IoT, and AI as well. We simply need a broader perspective that embraces both climate and gender. On top of these, new analytical capabilities give us better chance to understand gender implications on climate transformation faster. We need all perspective. We simply cannot skip the perspective of half of the population. We all know we are not where we need to be when it comes to inclusion, and women in tech inclusion. So how do we move forward? One action point that we can take is that if we are not fitting in a frame, this is no problem. In that case, we have a much freer license to act. Please use it. Also, please raise your voice and claim your space in the rooms. The others will not do it for you. It is on your own shoulders to claim your place wherever you're going. Another point to consider is that keep developing and learning, whether it is in tech or it is leadership. We need women in technology and we need women leaders in all aspects. Tomorrow challenges are complex and the need for transdisciplinary knowledge is growing. And also another very important point, if you are at the beginning of your career, if you just figured out what is it that you are interested in, get yourself a mentor outside of your immediate working group. Someone more senior who is willing to support you if times are rough or you just need some time to reflect. Try to find them, Google them online, send them emails, build your connections. This is how to move forward in the world. Also, another important thing that I would encourage you to do is that set up a network of like-minded women and meet regularly to support each other and reflect upon working life. As I said before, we are in this together. Let's join forces and take a step into the right direction for changing the world to a better place for living, both for us and for future generation. And this is why I strongly encourage, and this is what we are doing in Women in Data Science. We are building networks, we are building support groups for the people, for the women to get together and build a critical mass in this world so that their voice could be heard. And one final point is that, remember, the world with all its resources and its problems is at our disposal. It is ours. So we need to be responsible for it and find solutions for its problems together. Do not forget that different perspectives brings different solutions, sometimes better solutions to the table. And this is what I encourage for all of us to be in this together. Thank you for listening. That was from my part. I'm sorry that the screen share stopped working in the middle of it, but I hope you have got my message already. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azimi, so much. I really think that your speech highlighted that the solutions that we need to do to act need to include everyone, and especially women, obviously, considering that women are half of the population. And still, I feel that women are dramatically underrepresented in data science. I feel that too often the gender perspective is speaking as being important, but it's still not systematically included. Gender is especially important for climate change because girls and women, especially in also developing countries, are those who most likely will suffer most from the impact of climate change. So we need to keep learning new ways in which we will improve ourselves and challenge our present ways of thinking. Please, if you have questions about this talk, please post them in the chat box so we can speak about them at the end. Our next speaker is going to be Ms. Elena Ocenik from the International Renewable Energy Agency, and she will, at least I hope so, connect some of the dots about how diversity, inclusion in climate action can be done through renewable energy and innovation. Please, Elena.
Thank you very much. Indeed. Hello, my name is Elena Ocenik, and I work in the innovation team of the International Renewable Energy Agency. And I would like to take the opportunity here to say hello to my friends, both from my hometown back in Romania and as well my new home here in Germany. And I also would like to greet the international audience that we are having here today. Now back to IRENA. IRENA promotes the use of all forms of renewable energy. For example, renewable energy is bioenergy, but also geothermal, hydropower, ocean, solar, as well as wind energy. And these are all technologies that we are working on. We've heard this today, action to reduce the impact of climate change is critical. And in this context, the Paris Agreement sets the goal for countries, for global leaders, to limit the increase of global temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to attempt to limit this increase to even 1.5 degrees Celsius by mid-century. Now, what does this mean? This means that we need a transition to a low carbon energy sector. And why is that? Energy is in fact emitting 2/3 of the total global emissions. And here's where our work comes in. And why is this relevant? This is relevant because we all use energy. We are flying, we are taking the bus, we are driving cars, we are using mobile phones, we are using computers right now. We even use electricity, right? And the examples can go on and on. Now, I also have a positive message for you, and that is the following. Renewable energy, coupled with energy efficiency measures, can actually provide 90% of the carbon emission reductions that we need by 2050. So renewable energy is a key element of the puzzle to stop climate change. And I have a question for you. I'm very keen and eager to learn about your opinion to the following question. And I would like to kindly ask my colleagues to please put the poll on the screen. What I would like to know from you is, to meet the Paris Agreement, we need to fight climate change, and there are several sectors that can help do that. So in your opinion, which parts of the economy need to decarbonize in order to achieve that? And you have the option between transport, buildings, the electricity sector, and the industry sector. So please choose one or more options. Multiple choice is possible. And then we can discuss the results together. You have a couple of seconds to do that. Thank you. Okay, very nice. Thank you very much. I see that many people have replied, and it looks like most of us, I also replied to the survey, replied that industry is a key element. Yes. Next, electricity. Yes. Transport. Yes. And buildings as well. So there was not really a trick there, but there's no real right answer here. And today we're here to discuss about inclusion. And actually, we need all sectors of the economy to decarbonize. So indeed, all of your answers are correct. So that's an interesting finding. We should, and I think this is also the message that we heard today, we need all parts of society and of the economy to contribute. in this endeavor. Now, how do we achieve that? And we have abundant innovations available today already that are there and can help increase renewable energy in the various segments of our society. And now I would like to show you a short video, and I would like to kindly ask my colleagues to please show the video. Thank you very much. So you have seen in this very short video that there are various options that we can use to decarbonize, especially the transport and the industry, since there the emissions are very high. These are very intensive sectors in terms of carbon emission and pollution. So the question at the end was, how can you help decarbonize? And indeed, beyond the economy, each of us can make a difference. And this is the key message I would like to send today. While governments can invest in research and development, everyone else can play an active part. And we heard also today that women can be agents of change. So women can be an active workforce. And it's interesting at IRENA, we also look into these issues. And among our studies, we keep on finding out by surveying several women and men working in the renewable energy sector, but also in the conventional energy sector. And we consistently find out that competence is not one of the limiting factors of the women participating actively in the workforce, but rather the perceptions. So it's more about the social norms. So I think here's something where we can all contribute to change that. In Africa, for example, women can also help reduce pollution by distributing clean cooking solutions. This can help improve the health in their communities. Women can also be entrepreneurs, just like male entrepreneurs. And of all ages, these people can create new technologies. Regulators can provide the environment for new businesses to flourish. Consumers can also be prosumers. And I would like to stop here for a second to explain what we mean by this. At the end of the day, we're all energy consumers and electricity consumers. And if you install, for example, a solar power plant on your roof at home, if you have a home and if you are a homeowner, you automatically also produce electricity. So by producing and consuming electricity, you are a prosumer. So this is an innovation in terms of business models, in the way which conducts our daily lives. Okay, but you can also drive an electric car, an electric bus, all powered by renewable sources. But I think above all, the young men and the young women have many options. As consumers, and we have seen this also in the video, we can create demand for green or low carbon products like bioplastics. If you're a pupil, you can ask teachers about what measures exist out there to reduce climate change. If you're a student, you can opt to study innovation and technology that can help tackle climate change. If you're a young professional, for example, you can decide to work in the renewable energy industry, and there are plenty of jobs there. In our IRENA studies, we have also found that the female workforce is higher in the renewable energy sector than in the conventional energy sector. That's an interesting finding. And I think more generally, as young adults, we can choose to subscribe to renewable electricity to supply our homes. And the list can go on and on and on. So before I conclude, I would like to mention that IRENA is also actively engaging with the youth. In 2020, IRENA organized the first youth forum during our annual assembly in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates. So there the policymakers met with the young people to discuss how we can all together accelerate the energy transition to a renewable powered world. And by saying this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, so much. I actually found that also like all of the sectors you mentioned are important in the poll, and it looked like most of the people also agreed. And it's very important that you emphasized how everyone can do their own share to tackle climate change. Now, there was a comment in the chat box that on our current path by 2050, just 7 industry and transport sectors will be responsible for 38% of energy and process emissions. That was one comment for Elena, and another one, which is a question actually for Yelena, and by this I open the floor to discussion, that there was a last question I see is from Eva Marchu. For me, this sounds like very much a technical fix for a problem which has way more dimensions, also social and behavioral aspects. Wouldn't it be necessary to reconsider our values and behavior rather than going on with business as usual while reducing CO2 through a technical solution? What do you think, Elena, of this question?
Thank you very much. I think there was another question which I didn't catch at the beginning. Could you please repeat that one?
That was a comment. The first one was a comment that 38% of energy and process emissions, they come from the industry and transport sectors. But the second question that I had for you was about that isn't this just a technical fix that would require, for a problem that would require also social and behavioral aspects? What do you think?
Thank you. Yes, now I received very well your question. Indeed, I think you're touching a really sensitive point, and this is something we're working on at IRENA. So climate change indeed needs to be fought from different angles, and our mandate is to provide solutions to the energy problem, because we've seen that 3/4 of the energy emission, of the CO2 emissions globally, come from this sector. So this is where renewable, which have been ignored for a long period of time, have been deemed too expensive, not feasible, and so on. So this is where we come into play. So just to give you one example, in the past 10 years, the costs of solar energy have decreased by 80%. Now that's a lot. If you can imagine any sort of product or good that you're buying and that has an 80% cost reduction, that's significant. So this cost reduction, and here's the economic element into the equation. What does this bring? This means that this opens the opportunity to use renewable energy in other sectors beyond electricity. And here's where we enter the technical aspect, right? How can we use biofuels to fly, not to use diesel anymore? How can we use electricity in electric vehicles so that we don't use fossil fuels anymore? And the example go on and on, like how can we use hydrogen produced from renewable electricity to produce steel, for example? And again, we don't have to go through all the technical details, but there are solutions out there today. And what we need to do is to scale them up, make them available for everyone. So economies need to take these new technologies up. But, and this is your question, is this enough? Clearly, this is not enough. And this is where our work in IRENA, we clearly indicate that there are social economic benefits in this energy transition. And I mentioned quickly health. If we reduce pollution, we will improve the health of our citizens and ourselves. I mean, we are all young people. And by 2050, I will still be working. And I think most of us here will. So I'm not going to be retired yet. We have a lot of work to be done. So this is one benefit. But then there's the benefit of increasing the workforce, increasing the share of women, we heard, but all segments of the societies that can participate in the energy transition. And our studies have also shown that the limiting factor, the barrier, is not the lack of competence, but is the perceived role of certain categories in our societies. And specifically on women, it is really that. It is a social norm that needs to change. So again, it's a very complex question, and I hope I could give you at least a couple of elements of this puzzle, but it's not all about technology. And I would like to mention perhaps one more thing, and I will close with this one, is that in our work, for example, in order to scale up the use of solar and wind, because these are considered now mature renewable technologies, we need to go beyond technologies. We need new business models. We need to use digital technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, there's a lot of big data powering also this. And then in addition to that, to these business models, we need regulation, we need finance, we need new ways to operate our systems. We need to change things. So it's a really very broad way at which we can look at this problem to find solutions, but there are solutions out there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to ask then, continuing on from this, from Orna, you have also, you spoke about climate change as well, but your perspective was a bit different. What are your thoughts on this, especially considering we have spoken about technology and innovation? What is the role from your opinion on all of this that's being said?
Well, my opinion is that we need everyone on board. So what I do every day, I'll try to create or produce media that inspires and helps youth to get on board and get excited and get inspired. And I think one of the problem is that mainstream media produce media that is not very accessible or relatable. And I think we need content that is. So this is my point of view.
Yes, I can totally agree with you also from my opinion. And actually this brings us to another question that's been posted in the chat box. But that I'd like to pose this question to Seppi Nud. What is your opinion? Most of the persons come to these kind of serious discussions during their teenage. How can we educate the importance of the topic climate change from the primary level of education? And this has been what Orna also spoke about, that we need to actually create ways in which everybody engages, especially in the young age already. What do you think of this question?
Thank you. That's a very important question. And I honestly think probably we talk a lot and we act less. So by just telling people that something is important, this is not going to be internalized. We need to show them in practice that what are the consequences, take them to places. That the fact that we are trying to protect our youth, our teenagers from not seeing the bad things, not seeing the damages. We protect them now, but we don't protect their future. So they're not going to see that the damages that are happening to the world in total, how it's going to change. When we are taking them to the field, for example, we take them to the places that make them happy, is relaxing for them, but let's show them the bad thing as well. Let's show them the damages as well. We can tell them that there is a way forward, but if we don't act now, and if them as well as part of this change don't act now, then the future is not as bright as we try to picture it right now.
Thank you. Another question we have here, and this time I'll pose it to Alexandra. Based on what we have heard here right now, and you spoke about disabilities, we also spoke about gender and technologies, climate change. In your opinion now, based on what you have heard, what are some concrete actions we can take to inspire other people? How can a regular person who doesn't work on media, for instance, or is not a specialist like you, all of you are, how can that kind of a person help?
Yes, so this is a very good question. I agree on this point, totally. So when I'm giving you my answer, yes, climate change is a global major problem. We need to get young people involved, people with disabilities as well. So all of us need to be involved in this work together. So we have to reach people, and we have to think of ways how to protect the world. In other words, our future. So this is something that we need to together act on. We need to also often think of the ways that we can protect the world. So access to information in disaster situations is quite often the key. So that's what I think of. So of course, climate change is a big risk as well, but people really need to get involved, and accessibility is the key, and access to information as well. If there is a disaster situation, maybe a flood, in these situations, disaster-related information needs to be accessible as well for everybody. So disaster risk reduction made accessible in different kind of formats is very important. So through that, we can minimize damages. So that's something that I want to put forward. And also the information is the key, really. Bringing an interpreter on, and if there's only access to interpreter for an hour and information is being spread, and then a disaster happens, you can, through the information that you've spread, actually minimize the damage.
Wonderful. This is very important. It's all about also information, and it's all about bringing it and making it accessible to everyone. Finally, I'd like to also go back to the initial talk about climate anxiety. Orna spoke about climate anxiety, so I'd like to ask actually Elena, who also spoke about climate. Now I'm going the other way around. What do you think? What kind of innovation could we use in order to reduce this kind of climate anxiety and turn it into action for an ordinary young person, for instance? It looks like Elena, I'm not sure if...
That was for me.
Okay, yes, it was for you.
Okay, apologies. I thought that Ona would go first. Okay, yes, I was mentioning a couple of technologies that everyone could use, right? We are not there yet, but I hope that we will eventually get there, in the sense that we as young people, and I think our generations, the millennials, and especially, but also the generation after us, we were born with the digital technologies. For us, it's just natural to engage in social media, to keep up to date with friends and family, using these technologies, these various platforms, which today in the pandemic seem to be exceptional, and it's being accelerated throughout all the ages, right? But we are digital natives. What I'm trying to say with that is that digital technologies can help each of us as a consumer to be an active player eventually in the markets where markets exist, but also in our communities. And I would like to give you only one example, which is not applicable everywhere, but that's okay. I mean, things are changing, things are moving, but there exist renewable energy communities. You can trade peer-to-peer electricity. And I would like to come back to the example of you installing a solar photovoltaic power plant on your roof. Well, if you produce too much electricity because the sun is shining, with the help of your mobile phone, simply put, with your mobile phone, if we scale up the digital technologies we have available today, you could sell your electricity to your neighbor. And you don't actually have to do much other than setting up on a platform, an account. But of course, I'm simplifying, I'm oversimplifying this now. But because I'm trying to tell you that with a very simple technology that we have today, everyone can be an active player. If you don't have a solar rooftop power plant, you can buy from your neighbor, right? You can sit on the other side. So these peer-to-peer exchanges can be there. And this is only one example. And again, we're not there yet. Maybe it's too early. We're speaking about innovation, we're speaking about the future. But I think we should not take the technologies or the future or the innovations or climate action as something that is not attainable. It can be done. We know that there are people out there working, very brilliant people, young entrepreneurs, younger and older as well, that are developing solutions. And at the end of the day, with the mobile phone today, you can do a lot of things. I hope this replies to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. I think this was a very comprehensive answer. We are now heading towards the end of our discussion, since our time is ending right now. And I think to sum up this, there was this last question about what sector do you believe should take the main lead on climate action? Governments, NGOs, business, or for example, the UN or the EU? And Alexandra already answered this in the chat, that governments and institutions with technical guidance from NGOs and businesses in their respective field of expertise. I think this kind of sums up the idea that it's not only, and this is my opinion, it's not only that who takes the action or who should be the main lead, it should be every one of us. We should participate, all of us. And like I said, sustainable development is like a house with 17 different doors, or we can do all of us, we can do our own part into making a better future. And here, I think today we heard a lot of great ideas about how can we use technologies, how can we include gender or disability perspectives, and take concrete action to tackle climate change. So thank you very much, all of you, and I wish you a happy UN Day today. Let's keep on doing great work, and hopefully our audience also got a lot of new ideas for the future, how we can take action. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.